It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is joint replacement and walking devices. And joining me today is Chris Marriott, Physical Therapy Rehab Director for Gentiva Home Health.
Thanks for having me on the show, Joe.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to have you. I always enjoy having you, Chris, because I always learn more about it.
We have a great time. I look forward to it.
I happen to be a guy that uses the walking devices.
You've gone through a few of them, I must say.
Yeah, well, I've told you so many times, Chris, I get very perturbed, and I'll say this directly to you listeners, those of you that really should be using a cane or a rollator or some kind of assisted device to help you walking and are not doing it, are only making yourself liable for injury. You could fall, you could twist, pull a muscle, and you could end up in a hospital with a broken hip when you don't need that at all. And for you guys that are my age or close to it, you'd be surprised at how many young girls will open a door for you if you are walking with a cane.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a given fact of life, and there's not a thing wrong with it. You know, being a former military person, I believe in developing a good strategy. And having a good strategy to meet people, there's never anything wrong with that, Chris.
Well, it gives an added area of caution for people who are close to people. They know that if they've got a cane or a walker, that to be more careful around them. You know, if someone had needed a cane but they're not using it and they're in a busy mall or a shopping area or going to the store, they're at a higher risk for being bumped without just having that assistive device with them.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but I noticed that if like at the church I go to, the restroom facilities are in the back of the church to one side, and there's a crying room right close to it for the children. And if you have a cane or something and people come out of the restroom facility doors and they see you standing there, they're much more attuned to the fact that they have to be careful around you, or they don't run over you. Or in trying to, the mass exodus from church, if you have a cane, people give you a little breathing room.
Absolutely. It's a little force field around you, I think.
So it just makes sense.
Yep.
And some of these doors, it's pretty hard to open some of these spring-loaded doors. And let somebody else open the door for you. The only thing you have to do be careful is they don't close the door too quickly.
Right.
Because you can't move too fast to get out of the way.
Exactly.
But what our topic was today, Chris, is a day in the life of a joint replacement person. And speaking about walking devices, a couple of months ago, you and I did a radio show on walking devices. And it was an hour-long radio show. And I would say about 37 or 38 minutes was taken up simply by you talking about the different types of walking devices, what is best for given situations, what are dangerous, how to put yourself in a safer environment. And I said to you, Chris, that'd be a great TV show.
Well, it's come a long way. I mean, 25 years ago, all we had to choose from was either a cane you bought off the rack or possibly a two-wheel walker that didn't fold, and that was your options. And they've gone a long way with advances in four-wheel walkers and what we call hemi walkers. There's always the unpopular by myself quad cane. So there's different choices that have evolved over the years to much better cater to people's walking needs. So it's not just pulling off the rack kind of deal. Let's customize the appropriate device for what you need.
Well, let's start with a real basic assumption. You got a guy, man or woman, coming home from a hospital, and whether they've had a hip operation or not, there still are many other criteria that say you need to use a cane.
Mm-hmm.
What do you consider are some of the biggest obstacles in getting a person to realize that they should be using a cane in the first place?
We talk about this all the time, and it is someone who unfortunately does not want to be seen as a cripple or handicapped by having a cane or a walker in their hand. So some of the vanity that's out there really inhibits people who really should have a walking device. So they don't think they need it. They see themselves as walking along quite fine, but the walking pattern that they have without that cane is probably very detrimental to their health. It's injuring their hips or their knees or spine even more. It's causing their body to expend more energy, so maybe they can only walk for 5 minutes at a time without a cane, and with a cane they may bump it to 10 or 15 minutes, so that they don't see those small little pieces of what a cane or assistive device can do.
I notice when I sit and my legs are immobile, once I get up, I have to use my hand, and I brace myself to cause my legs to force my torso up. But once I do that, I'm not always, it takes me a while to become steady.
Mm-hmm.
And even with a cane, I find I still have to be cautious about where I place my feet, because just because I have the cane doesn't mean I'm safe.
Right. A cane only expands your base of support. Your base of support could be the shaded area between your 2 feet and all the area in between it. Putting that cane down just extends that shaded area slightly, so it gives you that extra little tripod effect of extra balance. It doesn't secure your balance for sure.
What are some of the basic requisites, thoughts that we should address in talking about using a simple cane to an advanced rollator type device?
Okay.
Start with the basic things and point out pros and cons, and take that thing up that ladder for us.
Absolutely. The 3 main reasons why anyone would receive any kind of assistive device are as follows. The first one is it's going to help increase your distance that you can walk. So this is your patients with chronic diseases such as congestive heart failure or COPD. It reduces the energy the body uses to walk. So that's the number one. The number 2 benefit of using a cane or a walker is taking some weight off of a painful joint. So if someone's got an osteoarthritic hip, knee, or back, the weight that's put through the walker or the cane takes the pressure off of that back. And the last part that a walker cane would do would be to increase someone's balance. So it increases the base of support we talked about and allows someone to be much steadier. So there's 3 different reasons why someone might have a different assistive device. Now we can take it from the least obstructive assistive device to the most obstructive.
In doing that,
Mm-hmm.
let's say I have an injury to my right knee.
All right.
Where should I be using the cane?
The cane should be put into the opposite hand of the injury that you have. So if you've got someone who's had a stroke or a knee replacement or a hip replacement, it goes into the opposite hand because it is usually being placed down at the same time as the painful joint, but across from it. Many times you and I see them in the malls and they've got that cane just absolutely stuck right against that injured leg, and people are using it like strapping of a support brace to a knee. Braces should be worn on the same side that the injury is, but a cane is on the opposite side. So there's where we get some of the confusion.
You know, when you were doing, I was thinking about the fact that I had my hip replacement on the right side, but I used the cane on the right side. I forgot when I had my stroke, I was a little weak on my left side, so that's why my cane was on the right side.
Correct. Yep.
You got to use your head sometimes too.
So, you know, whenever we introduce an assistive device, it's a conscious effort of walking. We have to retrain the person to place that cane or use that walker on the appropriate side. And it takes a bit of getting used to, especially if someone's a left-handed dominant or right-handed dominant person. Their tendency is to use it in their dominant hand and not necessarily on the correct side.
Okay. Let's start with a plain old single.
That's coming in a second. Oh, here. Plain old single cane, single prong cane we call it. You can buy these in most drugstores. Walmart sells these. These are assistive device which should be measured to each patient. So one size does not fit all. It should be, as we're standing up correctly, the top of the cane should come to the crease of the hand. So we're standing up correct. Arm is by your side, and the top of that cane should be right where the crease in your wrist is. That cane is used again for offloading some weight to a painful joint. It's used to increase the distance in someone if they've got a COPD because they're not expending as much energy. And then again, for someone who's got balance issues, it increases the base of support. So this is your...
Can a single prong cane help with the balance?
Absolutely, yeah. The disadvantage of this one is you cannot put a lot of weight on that cane. You don't want to be pressing down hard on it. You don't want to rely a lot on it. This is for someone who just needs a little bit of offloading, a little bit of weight reduction to a painful joint.
Okay.
Going next after that is probably the most confused type of assistive device, and that's the quad cane. And I brought my little friend here with me this time, and I'll show it to the viewers. It's missing a little prong here, but too often people use this and they think that 4 prongs are better than the 1, and this is going to help them and give them much more support and stability. The only time one of these 4-prong canes is really useful is someone who walks extremely slow, because you've got to place all 4 prongs down at the same time, and if you're a normal walking pace, you really can't do that effectively with this. The reason why many therapists don't advocate using these is that 4 prongs are now 4 things you can get your foot caught on as you're walking. It's a good 6 inches wide, so as it swings past your leg could accidentally hit this cane and be more of a hindrance than some support. So 4-prong canes only used with slow walking people. Maybe they've had a stroke in the past. They need a little bit more support. They can take some more support on a 4-prong cane than a single cane. But definitely not if you've got a normal walking speed.
You know what I found a good use of the 4-prong cane? I have one.
Mm-hmm.
I shorten the handle on it, and I have it beside the commode, and I can I have a grab bar on the right side on the wall, but if I really feel a little shaky, I can use this as a levitation device for my left hand.
Absolutely. It's got that 4-prong base that it won't shift as much as a single prong cane.
Right, and you got the 4 rubber things on the bottom to keep it from sliding on the bathroom floor.
Right. So
a lot of it amounts to the person using the device, using their head a little bit to see how they can make it work for you instead of against you.
Right. The next one up the line from the 4-prong cane is probably one of the most rarely seen assistive devices out there. It's called a hemi walker, and the word hemi is from hemiplegia or stroke. This is essentially a one-handed walker that if someone's had a stroke such that they don't have much recovery of an upper extremity, but they need the support, this is one walker that they can use one hand to advance the walker slowly and take steps with it. Again, they're rarely seen. We use them in rehab centers. People may use them in the home to get around in the home.
I don't think I've ever seen one.
Many times people who use them in the home are probably not going to be ambulatory in the community using these. They're going to be people who maybe have a wheelchair for their main transport or a scooter.
Okay.
But that's a hemi walker. Next walker after that, also very rare, is a 4-pronged walker. There's no wheels on it anywhere. It's just a walker with 4 posts on it.
Now, I have used those.
Usually seen for people if they've got a severe weight-bearing restriction on one of the legs. So let's say someone's broken a hip and they can't put weight on it. They advance that walker. They can put a lot of pressure on it. It's not going to roll out from underneath them, and then they can take a hop step with that. So a 4-pronged walker, again, is pretty rare, usually for someone on a very interim basis.
But aren't they a wider walker too?
They're wider than a hemi walker, but they're very similar to a standard 2-wheel or 4-wheel walker in terms of their base of support.
Okay.
But 4 prongs, a lot of weight down on it, and usually taking a hop pattern with that. After that is a 2-wheel walker. two wheels at the very front that don't swivel. So they're inline wheels that don't move side to side, and there's two little pegs or stoppers or skids at the very back of it. This is going to give you some added mobility with the wheels, so you don't have to lift the walker up every step. And it also got some stability because the wheels don't allow you to move side to side. So with an inline walker, you've got that stability, but you've also got the mobility that you don't have to lift it. These are probably the most common walkers that we see out there in rehab centers. These are the walkers that most people will be issued with if they have a hip or knee replacement. When they leave the hospital, they'll be issued with a two-wheeled walker with two inline wheels. Next step up from that, there's a walker with two wheels that's got the front wheels that swivel. So less stability, but now it's easier to turn. So
it's a two-wheel?
Two wheels at the front, two skids at the back, but the two front wheels are mobile. They'll actually turn. So this is someone who needs that stability of some skids at the back, but then is using it more on a full-time basis around their home. It allows them to turn a lot easier in hallways. So the lateral movement is there much more so than the inline wheels.
Okay.
And then again, the ones we see in the community now are the four-wheel walkers. This is the area where there's huge advancements out there because they're all tailored to people's size. There's large ones, small ones, ones with baskets, ones with seats. They usually have brakes.
Yep, they have the brakes.
They have the brakes.
Okay.
Added bonuses if they all have baskets to put your stuff underneath there. The little seat can be used to transport items from a kitchen, meals.
Are you talking a walker or a rollator now?
Well, I call it a walker, and you probably call it a rollator, but it's a four-wheel walker that has a seat and brakes on it.
Okay, that's the one that has a seat. That's what I have.
Right.
I have one of those, and I actually have two. I have one to keep in the back end of the car, and I have one that I use around the house. And the reason I like the rollator is because it forces me to stand up straight.
Right.
And I like the four-wheel one. You didn't mention the three-wheel one.
That was coming at the end. Because
okay.
The three-wheel one is actually, out of all the wheeled walkers, is the less supportive walker. So the three-wheel walker, a lot of times the wheels are three large wheels. They fold up like a little accordion, and there's a little pouch in the very front section there. These three-wheel walkers offer less support than a four-wheel walker. There's no seat on these walkers, but their advantage is that they can fold up and they can move in tight situations. They offer a little bit of support for balance, a little bit of weight offsetting, but not nearly as much as a four-wheel walker. Think of them in like the ATVs. There used to be lots of three-wheel ATVs out there until they decided that they were hazardous and they would tip over. Same thing with the three-wheel walker.
That's what I wanted to point out. From personal use, I believe that triangular shape of the three-wheeler can cause a person to either become overbalanced on the right or left side. If you tend to shift your weight a little bit, you could actually cause yourself to fall.
I rarely do I suggest these. A friend of mine, her mother needed one, and I looked at her situation. It was very appropriate for her. Usually people who have tight living quarters. They're in a small apartment. The four-wheel walker is too bulky for them, and they don't have a real big balance deficit. They just need a little bit of help. They want the speed of the wheels on a walker and the convenience of a little pouch to put their purse or something when they're walking in the community and stuff.
What are some of the dangers that you have found in all the years that you've been a therapist? What are some of the greatest dangers that you find that people encounter in using walking devices, Chris?
They're not measured for them. A lot of times people borrow walkers from their friends or neighbors or spouses, so they don't have the most appropriate height on the walker. They don't have the appropriate walker with the brakes that could run away from them, so the brakes maybe are not working. A lot of times with the four-wheel walkers, it has a seat, and there's a proper way of putting the brakes on and then turning completely 180 degrees around and sitting down properly. So we see the odd accident when people have tried to sit down on a walker and not sat down properly. We also saw one funny incident when someone was actually pulling a walker a husband was pulling her spouse. He had a scooter, he had a cane, and he had hooked his spouse's four-wheel walker that she was sitting in, pulling her backwards along the hallways in one of the independent living facilities. So that's how crazy it can be out there.
It would sound kind of crazy to me, too. When you talked about correct seating and locking the brakes on your four-wheel rollator, Beth, who was a Gentiva therapist, who was my home health therapist, she cautioned me greatly in doing exactly what you said about pushing the brakes down to lock them to make sure that thing doesn't slip when I was trying to sit down, get the brakes locked, and to also try to hold on to the counter as well as the chair when you're sitting down so you don't
Right.
overcompensate in one place or another. But you reach a sense of security that if you don't use walking devices correctly, I would be my opinion that you could probably cause great danger to yourself if you become overconfident.
Absolutely. And there's different walkers that we recommend for people who walk outdoors mainly. You know, there's a lot of little bumps and cracks and twigs and acorns, and a larger wheel walker is going to go over those a lot easier than some of the smaller wheel walkers that we suggest. Let's keep these inside and use them for ambulating within your assisted living facility or home. And if you do a lot of walking outside, let's get a walker with larger radius wheels, which tends to be safer.
That's a good point, because I found it after I had my hip replacement, and then after I had my stroke, that when I went outside on the asphalt, you had to be more careful about using those smaller wheeled walkers.
Oh yeah, I mean there's walkers out there that are almost industrial walkers, and they are great walkers for getting on all terrain surfaces. We have patients who
Is there a danger though, Chris? Is there a danger about coming too dependent on a walker?
I would rather someone be more dependent on it. I think that danger is small compared to the dangers out there of people who are not using the walker. We sometimes will tell our patients, let's use this walker as a rehab device and work on your balance and work on your endurance, and we'll wean you off that walker. So there's times where it's appropriate that we don't want them to be using it long term.
How can you use exercises or on the walker as a balancing type technique? How do you do that?
Well, a lot of times when I tell my patients if they're walking outside, they don't have to put as much pressure on the walker, and when they're walking, they're turning their head side to side or up and down, but it's there. If they lose their balance slightly, they can hold on to it tighter. So that's one of the common ways we use it as therapists.
Something else I've noticed, it depends on where you go to buy a walking device. Prices vary greatly. Sam's and Walmart seems to have a very, very fair price on some of the more advanced types of walkers. And I'm a personal advocate of the rollator myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Medicare covers one walker every 5 years, as long as it's prescribed by a physician. And then that is for your basic walker, which nowadays the prices of walkers have come down and can cover most of those four-wheel rollators as well.
Yeah, I think I paid something like $75 for a rollator. It's probably one of the best reductions in personal income I've ever experienced, because I had to put another plug in for Gentiva here. You have a pouch that you give to people that use rollators and things and walking devices, such as a Velcro type thing, and it slips over the rail, and it gives you a nice pouch inside to carry a bottle of water, especially if you're outside walking.
Your phone, any kind of small things that you may need throughout the house. Yeah, those are for the ones without the seat on it, because there's nowhere to put anything on that type of walker, those two-wheel
But
walkers.
that brings us another good thing in the time we have. There are some safety things that you can do with when you're using walking devices. One I think more about is that if you're outside walking, using a walking device, you should carry your cell phone all the time.
Absolutely. It does not prohibit you from suffering an accidental trip and fall. So,
yes.
Yeah.
There's absolutely, and I doubt, I just can't imagine anybody at today's age that does not have a cell phone available if they really want to use it.
Very inexpensive, and it's almost in some cases replacing those Lifeline alerts, which I love those. Those are great systems. But
okay. What else about walking devices and rehab, whether it's in home rehab or facility, you're eventually going to come home, and hopefully you're going to come home. But what are some of the things in the last minute we have? What else would you tell our viewer to be particularly careful about in using walking devices?
Whenever they're changing from different surfaces, whenever they're going up one step, going out onto a pool deck or patio deck, or going up steps with a cane or with a walker, or going outside, that's when people have to let go with one part of the walker to open up a door, and that's where we have all the safety issues, or we see people falling mostly, is whenever we're crossing from one different surface to another. So to be trained in the proper use of your walker is huge, to make sure it's properly measured and adjusted for you, and that you know how to work it.
Chris, I want to thank you for being here today. We talked a lot about walking devices, but it is a whole new world for people that don't know anything about them.
It's much more difficult, but much better these days to have a proper use of a walker.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, viewer, for watching.